someone's just clap your hands.
My name's Alex Newson and I'm Chief Curator for Young V&A. So I lead the collections and curatorial teams, and we work on the objects and the stories and the things that we put in our galleries. Yeah, so we've gone through a great transformation over the past few years. The Museum of Childhood, as it used to be known, was a really important integral part of the local community. And actually people used to come in 400,000-500,000 visitors a year. So we were incredibly busy before we kind of embarked on this transformation. But one of the things that we thought was really important is that we make a shift in what we try to do to be more relevant for children and young people. Actually, previously we were a museum about the social history of childhood, the material culture of childhood, but we weren't actually set up to really engage with children about what it is that they want and what they can do and how they can actually be more creative. So as part of the V&A, we felt that it was really important that we really foreground kind of what creativity means. The V&A is a museum of art, design and performance, and actually we wanted to get more of those stories into our galleries. So we had this big shift to kind of remove kind of more of the historical kind of slightly nostalgic bits of childhood that were more relevant for actually adults, frankly, and introduce more things that are about creativity for children and young people. Well, very early on in the process of the transformation, we decided that we didn't want to just make a museum that was kind of us as curators, as adults, making something for children, but we wanted to talk to children, actually find out what they wanted a museum to be. So we went on a huge amount of co-design and consultation and co-production with children, all the way up from our kind of youngest kind of audiences of babies, all the way up to kind of 14 and young people, and actually to really find out that wide spectrum of different kind of audiences and ages and what they wanted. And I think I always go back to a really early session we did as part of the co-design when one specific child, when we asked them, what do you want a museum of kind of creativity to be? He said, well, I want it to be the most joyful museum I can go to. And actually that's something that we really held on to and always went back to and kind of almost took as our brief to try and create spaces that are incredibly kind of like joyous and joyful. Yeah, so since we opened, we're over doubling our audience that we used to have before we came, and we're kind of breaking our targets that we set for us after our reopening. So, I mean, we've been incredibly successful, both with the critical reception we've got and feedback that we've got from our audiences. It was very hard for us to try and strike a balance between wanting to create places that are playful, but also still create something that feels like it is a museum and it has 2,000 objects on display and it has the authority and the integrity of a national collection, but still has spaces that are playful and the things that you can do and interact and have fun when you're in the galleries. So the displays that are in the galleries are a mix of things that have been in the museum for hundreds of years, as well as some new things that we've sourced, and some very contemporary loans that we brought in from kind of contemporary designers and artists that have lent us really special things that we can show to our audiences. It was really important very early on that we made sure that we showed the breadth of the whole V&A's collection. So rather than it just being kind of like the Victorian objects to do with childhood that were previously on show in the Museum of Childhood, we have kind of things from the sculpture collections, from the fine art collections, from the architecture collections, from the design collections over at South Kensington as well. So it really does show the whole spectrum of kind of creativity that the V&A can represent. Well, I think my favourite things kind of relate to contemporary art and design. So we have some wonderful things that are kind of actually show how design can make an impact in kind of young people's lives today. We've got a display of objects from the company that made the micro scooter. It's kind of very much beloved by children and parents alike. But actually, there's some very interesting things about how they've taken that original design of a kind of the micro scooter and developed it in different ways to create new products. So that they now have kind of stunt scooters for people who kind of like going to skate parks and scooter parks. They've got kind of electric scooters. They've got one for commuters to actually go into work on. And then actually recently they've launched a two-person electric car, all kind of on the back of the development of that initial scooter. So it's really interesting for us to show kind of how design is an iterative process as well. And actually one idea can spark other ideas that can lead to a kind of a chain of events. So I think to have objects on display like that and actually to show the creative and design process behind them is really important. Well, I mean, obviously we've only just reopened, so we're not looking towards our next capital project quite yet. But we are always looking at the galleries and how they can be improved, and that's through changing the design of them and the display of them, but also the objects and the stories and the narratives that we have in the galleries. And actually, we are constantly making small changes to those, as well as some larger scale changes when necessary. And again, we do that with consultation with our audiences. It was really important that young people's voices are present on the galleries, and actually within the displays, within the choice of things, you can hear and see the decisions and the voices of young people. And we'll continue to do that as we rotate and redisplay our galleries. So the exhibition space is really important and part of that kind of introducing new content. And we can change those exhibitions more frequently than we can change our galleries. So it enables us to bring in kind of new content for visitors to see when they come back more regularly. So our opening exhibition is called Japan Mr. Manga. And it really draws on our kind of Asian collections from South Kensington, as well as new acquisitions and loans that we're bringing in to show kind of the creativity within Japan and how they draw on their mythology and their folk stories and their folk tales to be kind of creative in the contemporary realm as well. And actually, you can see how some of their kind of like most contemporary and technologically advanced designs still have roots in that kind of mythology and those folk stories from the past. So, I mean, as part of the redevelopment, we've got an enhanced schools and kind of learning program. So we've got a new suite of learning rooms in the museum, as well as a program that we're just launching for schools. So term's just started. So we've got an interesting and active program that we're bringing in, as well as weekend activity and other activity. So we have three different strands of learning activity. We look at family work, we look at informal learning for young people, and then we look at schools programs. So they really kind of make up the three main strands of our kind of our program learning offer. Well, I think it's so important that the Young V&A remains a free museum. It was free before we closed for a renovation, and it will continue to be free. We are a national collection, a national museum, and actually national museums are free for the public. It's the public funding that supports the work that we do, and it's vital that we remain kind of open for people to come to without having to dip into their pockets. I think that's increasingly important as people are kind of squeezed by costs going up everywhere, that the museum remains a free, friendly, open place for people to visit whenever they want. Well, I mean, we've had to be creative in terms of how we fund kind of the redevelopment projects, but the V&A has always done that, actually. We're lucky enough to receive money in terms of grant and aid from the government, as all national museums do, but we also kind of add to that through fundraising and other kind of donations and kind of trust and foundation work that we do. And we've got an incredible team of kind of a development team that work behind us to make sure that we bring the money in that we need for the projects that we do. So now that we're open, it's been fantastic to see people come in, actually, especially the local community. And we're actually starting to see people come back for repeat visits, which is really wonderful. And we're starting to recognize people and kind of know our local community as they come in more often. So we would encourage people to come in wherever they live in London and actually further outside London to come and enjoy a kind of a great day out at the Young V&A.